Great. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go through the housekeeping, and I have to read it because Stephanie left me like lots of housekeeping items. She's not able to come in this morning. So just so everyone knows, I'm Jennifer Schwartz. I'm Senior Vice President at Access Intelligence, and I'm part of the Renewed Group Programming Committee, as is Elizabeth. We want to thank everyone for joining Renewed. It is the open network for specialized subscription membership and event professionals to connect, share best practices, solve challenges, and grow our business. Couple housekeeping items. If you want to add your company name to your name on the screen, that would be super helpful. Just hover over your picture/name and just click on the 3 dots on your picture, and then you can rename it. So if your name's already in there, just do a comma and put your company name. And if you are comfortable and able, we'd love for you to share your video because it is supposed to be interactive, an interactive session. We also are encouraging folks to participate in the chat. I'm going to try to monitor the chat while we are talking. And ask any questions that come up through there. Maybe Elizabeth, if I miss one, you can jump in. Let's see. We want everyone to be involved in the discussion. I did put out, I think most of you got an email from me a couple of days ago where I put out some general questions that some folks had. So I can start with some of those in a sec, but obviously it's meant to be interactive hour. If you want to use your reactions, you can. There's a thumbs up sign, there's clapping signs. And I did put this in the chat earlier, although I had to log in and come back out again. So the meeting is being recorded, just FYI, and the recording will be posted on the website within the week. So with that, I'm going to start off with one of the first questions we got, and I'll open it up to the panel. How many weeks or /months out are people starting to market their events? So what are you finding is working for you in terms of your event marketing for whether it's virtual webinars? Probably most of you aren't doing live events, but if you are, I'll open it up to that. Does anyone want to start? And actually most of you are on mute right now, which is fine, but just don't forget to unmute yourself if you want to answer.
I'll start, Jennifer.
Yeah, great, Mary.
And I'm getting that echo. Now it's gone. So the so we traditionally do start 4 weeks out. We do this on webinars. 1 mailing email on week 1, 2 on week 2, 1 on week 3, and then 2 days before the event. What we found, interestingly, with what's been going on this year is we can market and get, well, we don't know if it's the same attendance or not, but we can just go 2 weeks out and just do 4 mailings, 2, and get huge numbers, I guess you'd call it. Good numbers anyway. So anyway, that's traditionally we've done 1, 2, 1, 2. And for each webinar, and like this year, we've had instances where we've had webinars 8 days apart.
What are you finding, Murray, or anyone else in terms of like, what are your best practices for communicating pre-event and post-event? Do you have like certain messaging that's really working to get people to sign up? And one thing I noticed, in not my company, but another company, somebody has been sending information about webinars, and they actually put right in the webinar, if you're not able to attend, please still register because you can view it on demand. And it's such a simple thing to think about, but you always forget to tell people like, oh, if you can't come, we still want you to register because then you'll collect that information. So have you or has anyone else found any best practices for what's working well to get folks to sign up?
Yeah, we've done that. This is Warren from Europe Science. We've done exactly that. So very similar to Murray, actually, we do a lot of webinars as opposed to full-on virtual events. And we've settled on quite a good routine of 2 weeks out. And we do 2 weeks out, 1 week out, 1 day before, and then 1 hour before. That's our method. It's people differ, but we have put on the you don't need to if you can't make it, still register because you can access it on the device. That message has been introduced this year. That's been pretty good. We get, I don't know, you tend to get 50% or so watching live, and maybe another 10, 15, 20% on catch up, and then 30% never turn up in our experience.
Yeah, what we found, Jennifer, is we give 3 prices each time. Like if it's the early bird, then you've got a 197 price, then you've got a 247 price, and then you've got the 247 includes the CD. And what's interesting is we have a huge percentage of the people who buy the CD. And then once the early bird is over, so our early bird is over after 3 mailings, and then it jumps to 247. And we'll get roughly, it used to be 50-50 early bird versus the other. Today it's more like 30-70%. So more people coming in last minute. In fact, we had one webinar. I mean, we got like 1/3 the registrations the day before and the day of. They were still, we had like, I mean, people just trying to get in while it was going on.
That's great. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, no,
I guess ours is different in that we're not charging for our webinars. Ours are our sponsored webinars, so that may explain the difference in attendance, I guess.
Yeah, we're doing something similar. This is Andy Smith from Halldale. What we are finding, though, especially if we have a sponsored webinar, is that the sponsors are very, very keen to have a high number attend on the day. So we're doing a last minute push from a personal email just to remind people they need to jump on, and we're getting 74%, I think was our last number, which was fantastic.
Wow, that's great.
74% of folks who have registered to actually attend.
Yes.
That's great for a free webinar.
Yeah. Yeah, ours are more in the 50-50 range for the sponsored ones. Obviously the paid ones are a little higher, but Murray, what kind of numbers are you getting for your paid webinars? Is it in the tens, the hundreds? Like what are you finding?
We're averaging about 200 per webinar right now. That's, I call a failure less than 100, and so this year it's been delightful. Repaying for late last year.
It's interesting to me to hear that, and I'm thrilled for you. We're seeing something interesting over at Simplify Compliance. We're seeing actually a slowdown in paid webinars just because there's so much competition for free in a lot of our markets. So I'm really encouraged and happy to hear that you're seeing those numbers.
Yeah, just to add to the mix, we have one of our speakers. He's doing the same webinar he does for us, 2 days, that same week he does it for us with a competitor. And he's been doing that with that competitor for, I don't know, 20 weeks, 2 a week, every week for 20 weeks. Still working for that competitor, and he does them for us, and we still get our good numbers too. So yeah, go figure, right?
Is anyone having success with virtual? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Adam. Yep.
No, I was just going to say that we have seen a slight uptick in revenue per webinar. We've cut back on some of our webinars in sort of a Darwinistic way, try to use those email slots for things that bring in the most revenue. What we've seen a real explosion in is our training pass. We do about 200 webinars a year, and we charge $197 per webinar. We charge $15.99 for a full year. And we have seen an astronomical increase. We explicitly say that it's just for one site, but we're starting to loosen that up a little bit. We're going to do some tiered pricing going forward. But the real success story for us this year has been on the training passes.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And so how many do you generally do a year? So it's usually at 200 a pop. How many would somebody get in like a year's worth, maybe?
They could get 200 a year, every Tuesday through Friday.
Oh, okay.
Monday's kind of what we call our emergency exit lane. If someone has to cancel or if we have a technical glitch, we move it to the next Monday.
Yeah, that's great. Is anyone doing sort of virtual events beyond a webinar, maybe a virtual trade show or a virtual, event where they're getting some paid folks that they want to talk about? We obviously have a
Sure.
bunch, but I want to open it up to folks.
Sure. So I'm from WTIN, and we are an information provider for the textile sector. We've just launched our first virtual trade show on 15th of October. We've built the whole platform ourselves, and we've got around 169 exhibitors from 26 countries and over 12,000 plus registered attendees for the event.
Wow.
So in order to
Wow.
give like a whole experience, what we've done is we've not just curated the booths, but we've also brought in a lot of like 100 plus conference presentations alongside. We are doing live roundtables, one roundtable every day. So people come back to the platform for those. And some of our customers, because they're showcasing machinery, they're actually arranging like live demos to the platform. So bring people on, get appointments fixed, and then go back to a different platform to do live demos. So it's just been 6 days, but yeah, it's going good. In first 24 hours, we had around 2,400 unique visitors. That's excluding the exhibitors, so that was quite good for us. We did see a slight dip over the weekend on the booth visits, but there was a massive jump on the content consumption. So people were actually coming during working days, adding things to their bookmark, what they prefer to go and visit, and then came back on a weekend to actually consume that video content or a write-up that was present on the platform. So yeah, I think in terms of revenues, yes, it's really helped us in this year because as a subscription provider and an actual event organizer, conferences globally, the COVID situation massively impacted our business as well. But this virtual trade shows really helped us. We've done £500,000 in just 5 weeks on this virtual trade show. So that's been a very positive point for our business. And from exhibitors, we've just started collecting some feedback, and it's all positive, except for a couple of technical glitches we had on day one when just everyone was on the platform at a given point in time and the chat feature wasn't working, but everything has been sorted out gradually. What exhibitors are feeling as of now is definitely it's a testing module for them. They're not expecting any sales lead, but they do, because Adam's just mentioned about training, and that resonates here, that they're saying it's a good platform for them to actually bring their global sales team together and showcase all their products, not just to customers, but also to their traders, distributors, global sales team, where they can do presentations or meeting only for the sales professional and enhance them and update them on the latest products. So that's something we were not thinking of, but it's come out of in the last few days that it can also be used by companies to organize their sales training if required. So we've got some suggestions to do things hybrid, which we might test in our next edition then.
That's very interesting. How, so what kind of engagement? You said that it was sort of a test for them. So did they not, when you sold the booths, did you not have to sort of say, here's what we think you're going to get? Or like, how did you pitch it such that because you probably weren't sure how many leads they would get?
So in terms of leads, what we did was we identified the core target audience that they're looking for. So they have very specific job titles or job functions that they go after in the trade show. And as a publisher, we had those people on our platform as our subscribers or registered users. So we knew at least we've got a database to go after to register for free, because for visitors, it's free to attend. And for exhibitors, it's a paid model. That worked. Like we could actually do a bit of matchmaking and say, okay, we've got a visitor from XYZ domain who might be interested in your product. And if you participate, and that crossover really helped. We've been working in the event industry for a few years. So some of the participants actually have been part of the live events. So they knew the kind of audience we could pull to the show. So there was that little bit of trust factor involved. And that really helped, to be honest. They really put in their faith in us and said, okay, I mean, if any, there are other competitors in our textile sector who are doing it, but we slightly differentiated our offering. They were doing more of a sourcing event, like come and find a vendor, come and find a product. And we said, okay, let's just focus on new launches that people couldn't do this year because of cancellation of trade fairs. So we just focus on innovation or any new product launches. And that actually differentiated the event a lot.
That's awesome. Anyone else have anything to share in terms of what's been working with any events they've had so far?
Hi, Jennifer. It's Julian here. One of the businesses I work with is called HBI, Healthcare Business International, and we got caught by lockdown just before we were due to run our big annual event, which is a 3-day conference. You know, roughly 65% delegate, 35% exhibitor revenues. So we've had a slightly unusual problem, which is that we had already taken in a lot of the money from delegates and from exhibitors. So we've been essentially running since June we sort of reinvented the conference as HBI 365 as a year-round evergreen event, and we've been running it steadily since June, and it will culminate in December in a sort of a what's now looking like a 4-day extravaganza with presentations and roundtables and so on. So the issue with us has been engagement. How do we getting engagement from the people who had already signed up to the in-person event? And that's been, I would say it's been a kind of slow and steady so far. It hasn't been, we've up to about 20-25% of all of the people who had registered have attended something or filled in their profile or got engaged in some way. So we've still got quite a way to go to get the rest of those people engaged in what we're doing. Anyway, it's quite an interesting process of flipping from a 3-day live in-person event to a what is effectively almost like a kind of a membership, an event membership model.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I have to know in December how it goes in the end.
That was actually one of the questions I want to get to in a second that folks had about engagement. But real quick, I think, Adam, someone wanted to know how long the webinars were in your series. Are they an hour long each, or what are they?
They are 75 minutes. We tested into that a few years ago. So they're 1 o'clock to 2:15 Eastern. We usually ask the speakers to provide 50 minutes of presentation with Q&A filling the rest. The exception being when we have an attorney speaking. Then we only ask them to prepare 30 minutes because people just love to ask lawyers questions when they're not on the clock. So so it's 75 minutes length of presentation depending on the subject matter.
Great. And I hope I'm saying your name right. Is it Chinky? Okay. So Chinky, someone asked what platform you're using. I believe you said you built it yourself.
So
right?
yeah, we've built the platform ourselves in 4.5 months.
Wow.
I mean, we've plugged in few elements, like for chat, we've not built the chat module ourselves, but we've bought into a system that we can plug into it. But yeah, if anyone's interested, I'll be very happy to, do a demo later on. We could arrange a call and show you the platform. And just one more question, because Julian just talked about encouraging people to come back to platform because it's such for a longer duration, how to do that. We've added an element of gamification where we are offering points for every step that they're doing on the platform. So if they come and complete their profile, you get 50 points. If you download a brochure, you get 50 points. And then if you keep coming back to the platform every day, there's a multiplier, like on 5th day, you get a multiplier and a badge that, wow, you're performing good. You've reached level 2, level 4. And end of the show, we are offering some really fancy prizes to the top 3 people. So we've called it as an engagement program. And there's a leaderboard where people can see each other rising and going down on the leaderboard platform. So that's really encouraging. Like, we've got a visitor who's also written this on LinkedIn that on first 4 days, he's crossed 20,000 points and is on top of the leaderboard. And we never thought that somebody would actually consume so much of content over a weekend that they would get to that point, but he just spent the whole weekend looking at presentations, roundtable discussions, and literature from some of the key exhibitors, and he's earned those points. So yeah, I think it can be an encouraging point to bring people back if the event is for a longer duration.
That's awesome. That's really good. And what is your chat platform? You said that's a vendor you use for that?
We are using Mirrorfly.
Mirrorfly. Okay.
Yeah, so they provide services to, I think, Microsoft as well. And it's, I think it's an IP, it's a one-time purchase, so you could repurpose it later on for any other events if you, or any other things that you want to do.
Great. So yeah, so that's awesome on engagement. I know a lot of folks are asking the same question, you know, how are we getting them to show up, to engage? Whether or not you have a webinar or some other event, does anyone else have tips or tactics that have worked for getting folks there? Have you, you know, white paper downloads, any kind of way that anyone's found?
I'll jump in again, Jennifer. One thing we did with the pandemic, so all of ours are continuing education credits for CPAs and people like that. And the worry was, okay, you used to have a group, right? You'd have a firm would show up and they'd have 6 people in a room, or they have 8 people or whatever. So we now allow a single person to have 5 seats. And so with their original registration, they get 5 seats. And then they pay extra for the seat for the continuing education credit. So if you've got 4 other CPAs showing up and you want credit, then you got to pay, it's just $25. But so it really has worked well. I think that's helped us a lot, because otherwise people will look at it.
Someone else can come in their place kind of thing. Is that what you mean? Mm-hmm.
No, let's say they're like in my office building, most of the CPA firms, there are people who are still working remote. So now they're working remote, they can log in remotely up to 5 seats on that one price.
Perfect.
It hasn't affected any other aspect of what we're doing, but it's right on it's right below the headline saying they can do that. And I think that's helped.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Anyone else on engagement that they found has been helpful? Or marketing? I know we mentioned it at the beginning, but any marketing copy that's particularly compelling, that's getting folks to sign up for some of these things? Okay. Another question that came out was, is anyone trying to do a hosted buyer event, kind of like a small invite only? So maybe you have your buyer come in and the sponsor sponsors it, but we're talking, you know, 5 to 10 folks tops, right? Maybe on a topic or some area.
I think I saw, we actually have the perfect person on the phone, and I think he's here. Jim Mulpis, sorry for putting you on the spot. But Jim Mulpis is from Simplify's media division, and he's got a really, really cool series of events that he runs. So Jim, do you want to tell the folks about the exchanges?
Yeah, sorry, let me try to put the video on. Hey, sorry.
Great.
Yeah, you know, our space is the C-level of healthcare, you know, hospitals, health systems, providers, medical group practices. And we have different communities around each. We have a CEO group, a CFO group. We have a what we call an innovation exchange, which is a different set of titles around the innovation suite and the capital energy that is just coming on healthcare investment. We also have one for chief nursing officers, which is very active and growing. Revenue is 100% sponsor revenue. We have a number of you know, sponsors in each of these communities. We had one event this year, our CFO exchange in New Orleans in February, a week before Mardi Gras. If we'd have come a week later, we would have probably been part of a super spreader event, which is what they said Mardi Gras ended up being. We pivoted fairly quickly to full-on virtual events. You know, we learned a lot from this group and others very quickly not to try to take your, you know, try to replicate your live event in a virtual setting. We really wanted to build some interactivity. So we came up with a new model that really allowed the user and our members to guide the experience. That's been pretty successful. You know, we are seeing in our side of the business some fatigue, particularly on the sponsor side with sponsorship of virtual events. And I think one of the sentiments is that, you know, for the types of sponsors we're dealing with, they want to kind of save their powder for 2021 and be ready when there are opportunities for in-person networking. And we're seeing that. And so we pivoted our strategy to, you know, really keep the community engaged. We have a number of ways to do that. We have a dedicated social media director who keeps our members engaged in our LinkedIn community. But we also have, you know, some community calls. We have what we call the Ideas Exchange, where our members can come and they give 10-minute presentations on an idea and innovation. Certainly for us this year, our executives they're on the front line of the pandemic. You know, we have executives who chief nursing officers at health systems in New York City and places like that. So when we get their time, we are getting very small bits of it, and we create great value around that. You know, I hope this answers your question, but really our focus right now is just is community building, community engagement, keep focusing on the community. You know, our virtual events, we have some good runway with those. We'll build more virtual events into the packages that we have for our sponsors next year. But yeah, we are networking events, and for all it sounds like some great ideas we've heard about virtual events. For the sponsors that we're dealing with, they're relationship sponsors. These are long sells. For a health system to create a relationship with a C-level executive and a sponsor. So we're looking to get back to in-person events as soon as we safely can, because we feel like that's a key value for us.
Great. So in terms of events that folks are doing, again, one of the questions that came up was, how is any new model you're doing this year? You know, Jim, you just mentioned you had to do sort of pivot, you know, same thing with Julian. Is your new model affecting any topics that you're choosing? So are you doing different names, different positioning, how segmented? Like, how are your events changing maybe in the time of COVID that maybe they wouldn't have if they were live?
I'll share something real quick. One of our values is we don't pick the topics. Our members pick the topics. We've kind of put that process on an accelerator. When we start an event, even a virtual event now, the first thing we do in our community is we select 3 guides. We call them, you might call them something else, but an advisory board or whatever. But the first thing we do is we consult with those guides and just measure their priorities. I mean, we feel like we're informed, but we're not on the front line of health system, what's happening right now. And in our industries, that served us well, particularly this year, because it is changing by the minute how to manage a healthcare enterprise through a pandemic. So for us to, you know, pick a topic, you know, 2 or 3 months out and hope that it holds up over a marketing cycle just wouldn't work for us. So we really rely on our members to be our guide. And once we do that, it seems to resonate.
Great. Other folks?
Hey, everybody. Lucretia Lyons here with Business Valuation Resources. This topic was especially of interest to me. We had a large live event scheduled for September of this year in Las Vegas that brought together divorce attorneys and business appraisers who do a lot of work in the divorce realm. all my friends would get very concerned when I would be very excited about our big divorce conference, you know, the joys of being in niche publishing. But obviously the live event didn't happen, so we moved it to a virtual event, which was wildly successful. Adam and I were exchanging notes about the beauty of lower revenue but higher profit. So this is maybe a model that could, you know, evolve into something really sustainable. But what we found that what has happened is it's really transformed our thinking about formats and topics, because we have a very successful webinar line that are 100 minutes, Murray, as you know, the CPAs get the CPE credits in 50-minute hours. So the 100-minute makes sense. So we had, you know, traditionally topics that would fit really well into webinars, whether it was, you know, certain topics, maybe in divorce for valuation, topics in bankruptcy. And then we had this incredible experience with our virtual divorce event, which covered, you know, we basically, we did a lot of the programming tweaks to it to fit it, you know, most ideally into a virtual model. But we've now found our thinking is, wow, there's a whole lot of opportunity in between those two models, right? Yep. So what we've found, and it's really exciting, I guess, silver linings, one could say, maybe we have we have to be careful trying to put on too many of those really high level divorce events that are multi-track, multi-topic, take almost as much energy as a live event. But you have, we're exploring the idea of a master class, or what we're calling a mini virtual divorce conference, which is, again, not as you know, not quite as large as the full-on virtual divorce event, but there are topics in valuation that we have found, again, because of the current climate, it's really opened up our mind about how to look at the topics. If we have something on intellectual property, let's say, sort of there are standing topics you would cover in a webinar there, but what we found now is you can kind of do maybe a master class or a smaller virtual event where you can really take a deep dive into some of those subset topics without the full demands of a, you know, full-on virtual event, but something bigger than a webinar. So we're again kind of working out our nomenclature and our thinking about that. But it's really exciting because it feels like the matrix has just exploded as far as content possibilities pairing with format opportunities. So interested to hear other people's thinking about that. And I really look forward to seeing where we're at 12 months from now, because I think this for us could be transformative for our training line and for the company. It's our largest contributor. You know, we had I think it was, let's see, maybe a quarter of the revenue, but 3 times the profit. So I'm not in any rush to go back to Vegas and sign a contract with the Venetian, quite frankly. So, but then again, live events have never been a majority part of our business. So we're early, kind of a nascent model, but I think there's a lot of exciting opportunity to be had.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the content possibilities are really great, really exciting. And it's something that was probably happening anyway for us, but this has definitely accelerated, has been moving away from sort of presentation type formats, presentation followed by Q&A, into more collaborative formats. So something that Murray was saying struck a chord with me as well. I mean, like something doing deep dive workshop type events where people are coming together, particularly at the moment where, you know, we're also in healthcare and there are just so many new challenges people are facing, and how do you deal with this practical problem X? And actually that is a great source of support, I think, to hear how other people are doing that, well, like we're doing now, and just sort of but transmit it, making more and more of the content is tends to be focused on that kind of session rather than speaker sessions now.
And are you finding, Julian, that the folks are really engaging in that in terms of like these? Yeah. We
got some great testimonials actually from, I mean, we do a little, you know, we then publish a kind of a shortened edited version of each session afterwards. And we got a couple of great quotes saying, you know, this is why you get to go on the, you know, one chooses to go on these panels, because you learn something from what the other panelists are saying, or you learn something from somebody else, and that's what it's about, isn't it? But
we saw too, just on our, we were blown away by the activity on the open chat. Some people just saying great session, but Julian, exactly to your point, it was such a different kind of engagement than what we typically see on the webinars. People submit questions and the presenters answer them, and it's kind of, we look at it now, it's kind of one-dimensional. Now it was this, this dynamic discussion, people chiming in on what others were saying. So, again, sort of for unforeseen great upside to embracing this all of a sudden three-dimensional involvement with attendees.
Shannon, were you going to say something?
This is Shannon Stroll. I just wanted to jump in with Simplify Compliance. We do annually over 100 seminars, regionally based small seminar master classes. And, we started in May, with trying one of these as a live virtual offering. And we saw a tremendous, engagement level from our attendees, and people were saying how happy they didn't, they couldn't travel, but they still could get this education in that kind of really kind of focused instructor-led, content. We are doing these on GoToWebinar, and in some cases GoToMeeting, depending on the audience sizes. We've created materials download pages. We also record them so attendees can listen to them afterwards. We have somebody from the events team as a technical producer to make sure that that pressure isn't on the instructor to have to, really teach the class, but also help on the technical sides of the technology. So it's really been a tremendous, new virtual product for us. And, to the point, the margin is really phenomenal because, our GoToMeeting, their corporate accounts. So, those expenses don't come back to that, event level. So it's been a really wonderful model, and we've built a nice 2021 plan on, a balance between trying to get back to live in person, but also having these virtual offerings for those people that might not be comfortable just yet.
Yeah, that's great. Ed, did you want to say something?
Yeah, and sorry I arrived late, so forgive me if I hope I'm not duplicating anything. But one thing, I've been hearing a lot of people talking about, concern about Zoom burnout and that sort of thing. We heard about email burnout too, and we've heard about social media burnout. Are we all pretty much done with email and social media at this point? Because we're burned out, I think. I just don't buy it. This format works great, and my biggest data point is admittedly not ideal, but with these renewed events that we're doing here, the participation has been growing and growing, and that's because the membership has been growing. But I just don't see, if you're providing relevant information, I do think, what it doesn't do, if I had the chance to be hanging out with you in the bar at the hotel, this evening, there are plenty of opportunities where I'd be taking advantage of that. But for plenty of things, the fact that I can pop in for an hour here and then go back to my day, this is really awesome. So I just don't see that we're, if we do go back to working to the hotels, to your point, Lucretia, we're not going to be working as hard for the Venetian as we had been in the past, because this can continue to be part of the mix. The thing I personally don't relish the thought of at all is hybrid, where you get the worst of both worlds. I think what we're going to try to do is get away with as many online events as possible. Yeah. And then when you need to have an in-person event, we're going to do those.
Yeah, Ed, Shannon, and I can see Shannon. Hybrid is so expensive too. That's the thing, and you're right. It's the worst of both worlds. Those of you with children in hybrid schooling right now can attest that. But it's almost prohibitively expensive too. So I completely agree, Ed.
Yeah, and I think with our hybrids, the same thing. We've almost been mandated to not do hybrid. We have to really prove why we're going to do it. But I think if in the few cases we may do it next year, it's going to be simply the live event is where the networking takes place. That's where you go to get it first, right? And so we may live stream one or two keynotes, but really the back end, the on-demand version is after the event, and you can go in and listen to what was said, but you won't have the benefit of being there live and interacting with folks. So I don't know how that'll work either, but that's sort of the ones where we feel like we're going to miss out on people who just simply cannot travel because travel bans are in place, or, you know, we still want to try to drive that revenue. But agreed, I think streaming is ridiculously expensive. We're doing it for one of ours actually in 3 weeks. We have a live event that's going to be streamed, and we literally almost fell out of our chair with how expensive that was. So to be determined. I'll know at the next session, the November one, I'll tell you guys how it went. But
and Jennifer, I think I shared this on a previous meeting, but you know, one thing that all planners need to keep in mind is talking to the hotel about their bandwidth and making sure how many other groups in the hotels are, you know, going to be offering a hybrid at the same time, because that could be an absolute nightmare. If you're ready to go and everything is there, you have to communicate back to your customer service teams who's going to be getting those calls for those virtual attendees not being able to access something if the hotel's issue is
absolutely,
is cause.
Absolutely, so true. Yeah, Elizabeth?
So there's a question about virtual networking that Julian asked, and we struggle with that too. Melissa Varnavis, are you still on?
I am.
Yeah, do you want to? Melissa has done some things that have engaged some of our folks. Do you want to explain what's worked for us with some of our networking?
Well, we're kind of silly. and our members are are very fun and very engaged with us. At any rate, we know a lot of them personally. We sort of grew up with them. We've been around for about 13 plus years now. And the name of the association is the ACTA, Association for Clinical Documentation Integrity Specialists. So in our June virtual event, we really used a conference app, and we pre-planted networking educational topics, and the content team facilitated those educational content questions. Some of them were fun and interpersonal, you know, because that was way back at the beginning of the pandemic. So we were asking, you know, show us your workspace. And then people would actually have conversations about their workplace because it was new and different for everybody. You know, do you have 2 dual monitors? How did you get those dual monitors? You know, that kind of real basic things that we consider basic now, but was very engaging to our audience. And it was quite intense, the participation. And in that sort of live discussion feed, people were able to go off into side conversations and tag each other and stay engaged with each other. And they also had a separate area where they could exchange emails and that sort of thing. We used a different platform for our recent curtain call event, and that we had a real theme around it and behind it. It was a Hollywood golden era type theme that tied in with our week of professional recognition, which was you know, coming to an organization near you sort of thing based on a theater theme. And then our subsequent 3-day online event was curtain call behind the scenes of star-studded programs. So we really played to that theme and tied in with a lot of different, you know, cute titles, but also activities for people to do. So when they were in the event, we asked them to have a costume change and post a different profile picture of themselves. We asked them to, you know, really sort of in the discussion feeds within each program had questions and answers with each other throughout the play of the program. And then in December, we have coming up an outpatient focused session. And we're tying that to an investigative theme, which ties back to what our professionals are actually doing in their day-to-day. So it's not all just cutesy things here, but it's another way to sort of bring some fun and levity and joy into some of these educational sessions.
Great, and that kind of ties into one of the earlier questions, which is sort of maybe rhetorical, but why aren't people necessarily, like, what's keeping them from coming virtual? Like, what are some of the issues? And I think Ed made a great point, Julian, like, it's not necessarily a matter of the platform as much as it is that giving them a compelling reason to want to come in, right? So like if you're going to solve a problem for them, if you're going to help them with an issue, but you know what, just like people when they come to live events, some sit in the front and some sit in the back, and some ask a lot of questions and others just want to consume. I think it's just everyone's different. To Chinky's point, you know, she had a guy, you know, get 20,000 points over a weekend because he was just there to consume the information. So I do think that's critical to like not, as we're planning these events, to not sort of just think of your end users in terms of like a target market, but what are their consumption needs? What are their needs? Are some of them going to really want that education? Are some of them really interested in solving a problem? And are other ones just like dying to like, you know, talk to an adult because they're sitting at home with their, you know, first graders, right? So like, there's just, I think that's really important to be thinking about, because the way that you do the event, you know, you have to decide how important it is to sort of have something for both sectors. Or in the case of what Chinky said, you know, one of the benefits that came out of their exhibits was that folks wanted to use that for their internal training program of all their salespeople around the world. Hey, come to this exhibit and see what our company's doing new. So I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
This is sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
I was going to say something.
I was just going to. Oh.
Go. You go.
No, go ahead, Julian.
I was going to say something we're trying on the networking front is to so we're doing some structured conversations with our delegates basically, all between now and the event, in order just to find out who it is they actually would like to meet, rather than sort of leaving it to chance, and trying to act as a concierge service for those meetings, and sort of either arrange for people to share particular discussions together, putting on the same round table, or organize structured meetings, or just really be open to what it is that they want, rather than trying to guess the format that they would prefer. So that's I think that feels like the right way to go to me, but I'll be interested to hear if anyone else has done anything similar to that.
Tori, did you want to? You're on mute. Okay.
Oh, thanks. I can't piggyback onto what Julian said, because I think that's very interesting, but I was going to offer a very simple idea for getting people involved, or not necessarily engaged. I'm going to be careful with that term. But something that I think we could probably all appreciate. Our lives are so different at work right now. There's no transition period. It's just one meeting to the next, and we just go, go, go. I don't know about you guys, but my memory is going. And even if I have something in my calendar, or I actually have something that happened last week where I literally said to someone, I am so excited to go to this blah, 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 literally at 10 o'clock in the morning. By 2 o'clock when it was scheduled, poof, not there. So I think little reminders to people. I don't think we should be afraid of sending a quick reminder. I'm going to a fundraiser tonight. Thank goodness they sent me an email with a link this morning. Just ways that people, as much as we try to be organized and, when I get the email, I'll put it right in my calendar or invite you, we don't do it. So things like that are simple, I think are easy. I was at an event this weekend, and it was basically C-suite people, demographic, probably 80% male, probably 40 to 50 years old, probably at least college educated, a lot of them much higher than that. And what was really interesting is they did not communicate with each other. There was no networking going on, Julie, and it was kind of a fascinating exhibition to see. But then I don't know what term to use, facilitator, leader, moderator, whatever the heck the person was, started it out and sort of was like, well, hey, Andy, what do you think of that? Well, hey, Helen, what about this? And it was remarkable because everybody had something to say, but they just didn't quite know how to, as it's sort of like being at the bar at the conference. How do you saddle up to that bar and, get a conversation going? So those are my two just kind of simple, not content related ideas that I've seen work. So wanted to share those.
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right.
This is Melissa Varnavis from Simplify. Just wanted to weigh in on the content side and a couple of points that were made earlier about the uniqueness of this time and the ability of the technology to do new and innovative things, you know, particularly along the lines of small subgroup areas, which I think is a huge possibility. And I won't speak to the determination as my colleague Shannon Strella was saying. You know, the profit margins on the smaller and virtual events are better, and but it's really interesting from a content perspective to be able to facilitate that. So normally we put out a call for proposals for our main events, and all of these proposals come in. We typically get about 200 proposals per year, and out of those we can only use 60 or 70. But to be on the content side with our volunteer committee, looking at those different proposals, seeing which ones are maybe similar and bring those like-minded people together for a smaller panel discussion or an interesting subgroup that can be used in a different way than you would be able to have in your traditional presentation. I think, again, as was mentioned earlier, with your 50 minutes of presentation with your PowerPoint and 10 minutes of question and answers.
Excellent. Great, Melissa. Thank you. Other folks want to chime in on this issue of engagement or attendee communication? I think someone mentioned in the beginning of the call, they got, maybe it was you, Murray, they got 70% of their folks early, in the last couple days. We see that a lot. We get half of our registrations for paid within the last, half-life, the last 3 weeks of the event is the half-life. So
we're seeing that at Simplify Compliance as well. People don't have to make their travel plans like they would have, and really commit earlier on. So it's forcing us to really kind of not close the door on saying if it was successful or not until the event hits. So what we've decided is not to close registration until the actual start time of the virtual event, to give those people even up to that morning to get in and get them the attendee information. But then at that point, once the event actually kicks live, they would be pushed to an on-demand, in most cases.
Yeah, I'd add something, Jennifer, is that the early bird is a question for me now, because we had a couple events where we didn't have time to do the early bird. It had no effect on registrations. It just had a nice effect on revenue. So I'm not sure early bird is as effective as it used to be, because as I was saying, we get 70% of the registrants after the early bird at the moment.
Murray, how was your pricing relative to what it would normally be for the in-person? So was the full price of the virtual event still far lower than the in-person event?
No, these are webinars, and so they were always as they are.
I see. Okay.
So, yeah, no changes.
Huh.
There's a $50 difference. So the early bird's $197, the late bird is $247, and then they all can buy the CD for $50. And a big chunk of them do. That's kind of funny you call it a CD. And to me, that's something you play in your car or something, if you had a CD player anymore. But they do buy it. It's the CD-ROM.
So people if $50 just may not be as much of a motivator as, if it was a $500 thing, you might still see more of a difference there. But I was going to ask people that are doing more events than we do, because we've also experienced what Shannon, you were describing, that people signing up very late, even right during the event, in the first couple of sessions of the events, they're seeing an email and saying, oh yeah, I want to be there. But can you still be promoting 6 months out, 8 months out, or has that just died? At the other end, or if people are shifting later, does it also mean the early birds are still there, or are they, can you start marketing 3 months out instead of 6 months out?
Yeah, we're definitely within the 2-month time frame for all of our virtual. We had no choice. We had to convert a lot of live to virtual. So in some cases it was 4 weeks. In some cases we got to have 2 months. But Yeah, I think you're right, Ed. I think it's, you know, it's just different. It's just everyone's scattered more. Their time is scattered, to Tori's point, like they're doing a million things, and you kind of just have to sort of be there to remind them that this is happening. But if it's too far out, they just put it off. That's what we've kind of found.
That was what I was suspecting, was that there's just not a lot of return on those marketing efforts that are that far in advance.
To be honest, to Jennifer's point too, Ed, we haven't had 6 months of, you know, like getting our topics together, agendas together to even be able to market. So I think I would love to revisit this conversation coming into 2021, where we are putting the plans well in advance. But I don't know, because, you know, even as I think Tori was saying, you know, your days can start, or you have such, you know, wide open schedules for your week, and you have these, you know, I know at least for me, I have grand plans to attend these virtual events, you know, within the meeting industry to stay up to date. And then all of a sudden the day comes and I can't get there, which circles back to Jennifer's earlier point of, I think it's really important to, you know, in all of our marketing for these virtual events is to say, please still register, because you will get access to the on demand. And that's something that we haven't traditionally done.
Yeah. And Shannon, we found the same kind of experience. I mean, we had to consolidate a year's worth of events into basically 4 months. You know, all of our live events canceled. I mean, everybody, we're all in the same boat with this. So, you know, just necessity is the mother of invention. We haven't had that I don't think it would work either, but, you know, our marketing has been compressed. So we've had to be much more urgent, much more timely, much more frequent. On the call with me today is Allison Nielsen. She is the head of our conference marketing group. And I don't know, you probably have some thoughts on, and she runs a ton of events, not as many as you do, Jennifer, but quite a few events. And so,
hi everyone. Yes, my name is Allison, and I work with Tori at the conference board. So we run about 60 in-person conferences. So conferences are, you know, typically two-day events. And we moved all of those virtual as of March, as a lot of people did. So now for, you know, the rest of the year, we have a lot of virtual events that we are running. But something that I was wondering, and I had a question about, and that has come up on our team recently, is our communication strategy to attendees. And so, you know, right now we're communicating about a week out. We send out an email 24 hours out from the event and about 15 minutes prior. But something we're thinking about and exploring and are about to explore is communicating during the event. And so I think we're sort of struggling with the volume, right? So because we run a 2-day event and there are various sessions, do we send a note reminding people that each session is going to begin? That could be a lot. That could be, you know, 15 emails with reminders, or, you know, do we just email people that aren't on the call? How do we balance that? I think there is value to reminding people that a certain session is coming up, right? I mean, to Tori's point, we're all very busy and, you know, you sign up for the event, but if it's a 2-day event and there's a really great session coming up and you want to hop on for just that session, how do we communicate that? And how do we, you know, not bombard people with communication during the event? That's something that we're thinking about right now.
Yeah, so we are, I'm cognizant of the time too. We're coming right up on noon, and I want to make sure we don't keep anyone over. But Allison, great question. One thing I have found, I don't know what kind of platform you're using, but the platforms that we've used, they all have those that you can set up automatically. And I feel like the platform guys have like done their homework, so they know what the cadence is.
Sure.
So you can set that up within there, and absolutely we do that. Hey, the keynote's starting soon, or hey, you missed day 1, here's the information. So I would definitely look into that as well.
Does anyone use On24? Has anyone on this call used On24? I'd love to maybe talk to you offline about that.
I think we have. I'll ask.
I have, yes.
You know?
Yes,
yeah.
my Matthew Sabellas. I can text you. I've about 10 years experience with them. So was that Allison who asked that question?
Yes, yes,
Allison, I'll message you in the chat function here.
that would be
Give you my
great.
contact, okay?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I do have some end of meeting notes Stephanie wanted me to be sure to read off, so let me make sure I do that. Please let us know how we did today by voting in the poll. It's anonymous. Thanks again for joining Renewed. It's obviously the open network for specialized subscription membership and event professionals. We do have the free and open Slack community. There's lots of different groups within there. I ask questions at least a couple times a week. People have awesome answers. Our next roundtable meeting for events is going to be November 18th, which is the third Wednesday of the month. It is recurring, so if it's not on your schedule, you can add it. We do have an upcoming event this week. We have David Foster is going to do the On the Offense on Thursday. And then next Tuesday, we have a diversity and inclusion program that Ed's put together. We're very excited about. And if you're not already a member of the Slack group, you can join at renewed.net. It's renewd.net. And that is it for now. I just wanted to thank everyone. And please be sure in the next month to connect with each other on the Slack.